Imagine being in a stunning land with an ancient past, a civilized past from quite possibly over 3,000 years ago. A land that happens to have a pyramid in a very peculiar location that is somehow related to an ancient alcoholic beverage that you have to climb a mountain to get to. A land whose intrigue around this pyramid has resulted in a very popular tourist destination full of life, culture, and art. The locals here really seem to love to express their essence with a paintbrush to the wall. This place has a variety of delicious foods and some very interesting drinks. Might I mention that this town had one of the most beautiful restaurants I have ever been to, and that this place was so extensive that it deserves its own episode. So join me as we discover this very special, lively, and colorful magical town of Tepoztlan in a land that seems to simmer with nostalgia from its ancient past. And more than anything, as we embark on climbing a mountain in Tepozteco National Park to discover a jewel left behind by an old civilization. Our journey begins in the nearby colonial city of Cuernavaca in the state of Morelos. Known to many as the city of eternal spring, Cuernavaca is the state capital and is roughly 1 to 2 hours south of Mexico City, depending on traffic, of course. Before heading out to Tepoztlan, I decided to spend one night in this very beautiful rustic hotel that supposedly housed many famous people. This gave me the opportunity to check out a few cool things in Cuernavaca, such as one of the oldest cathedrals in the Americas, as well as the former residence of the famous conquistador Hernán Cortés, which now serves as a museum housing many artifacts from one of the oldest civilizations to ever inhabit the continent. I even found artifacts from different eras, a natural history section, and even beautiful murals from the famous artist Diego Rivera. Aside from the museum, there were many beautiful restaurants with, of course, delicious foods. We also checked out the old market area of the city, which honestly was quite a contrast with the more modern side of town. After this, we start our roughly 30-minute journey to Tepoztlan by first getting on the main highway that takes you to Mexico City. After spending a short time on this highway, we finally leave Cuernavaca and start climbing into the mountains, being that Tepoztlan is at a higher elevation. And as we climb, the vegetation seems to get greener and thicker. After about 10 to 15 minutes on the main highway, we reach the more minor route that takes you into Tepoztlan, while the main highway continues on to Mexico City. We also notice a lot of construction and traffic, which is quite common in Mexico, being that the country is rapidly expanding its highway system. Right before we arrive to Tepoztlan, we start to see the many jagged mountains that surround the city, being that this part of Mexico is in a very seismic area. And then we finally arrive to the magical town of Tepoztlan and we exit out of the tollway. It started to rain a little bit, being that at higher elevations you generally get more precipitation. Tepoztlan is one of many Pueblo Magicos or magical towns in Mexico, and a Pueblo Mágico is generally a town with a significant amount of cultural value. The cultural value in this town, of course, is the pyramid on top of the mountain that we see as we're arriving into town. It did not take long to get to my hotel, being that this is not a very big town. And just like other Pueblo Magicos, you find a lot of cute and interesting hotels, just like this one. After checking into the hotel, I decided to wash up a little bit, so let's forward the clock to the night hours when I finally leave the hotel to start discovering the town. And as I leave the hotel, I am almost immediately confronted by colorful and vivid art representing the culture. Even though many places were closed or closing, the town was still bustling with life, which is typical of many Pueblo Magicos. And like Cuernavaca, this town too was in the holiday spirit. Now you know I love street food, so I purchased this pan de elote, which is essentially a Mexican cornbread that is supposedly made with sweetened condensed milk. And I even ran into stores that were selling what seemed to be pretty natural foods like these eggs that were for sale. After a short walk, I finally reached what seems to be the main plaza, which was full of vendors and performances.
Tepoztlan, guys. We're in the main plaza, the main Zócalo. The main Zócalo.
La última canción va a ser Jingle Bells de James Pierpont.
After wandering around in this area for a little bit and soaking in the ambiance, I finally bumped into the touristic letters for this town. And just like other Pueblo Magicos, bits and pieces of the local culture and the city are expressed within the letters. We also can't forget to check out the beautiful gazebos you typically find in the plazas of these towns. It was at this point I was starting to develop an appetite because of the trip, as well as the walking I have been doing up until this point. And lucky for me, there was a Oaxacan restaurant nearby. And this place was quite peculiar as you had to walk through a store to get to the restaurant upstairs.
Entering the restaurant of Santa Maria through a store, believe it or not. It's pretty cool. Puedo grabar, es muy interesante para mí. Would you look at this? Bendita Santa Maria. Gracias por allá, ¿no?
To tell you that this restaurant was beautiful and colorful would honestly be an understatement. There were even some exotic offerings in this place, such as a snake-drenched alcohol. And of course, being that we were on the second floor, we had a good view of the city and could even hear the music from the plaza. But of course, I was here to eat, and Oaxacan cuisine is known to have some of the tastiest food in Mexico.
Red mole, which I have never had. Well, this type of red mole. And memeles.
We forward the clock to the next day to start our epic climb, and one of the first things we see is more beautiful cultural art, as well as the mountain we're about to climb. And being that I was starting the climb so early, a lot of the businesses were closed, but they do usually open up as the day goes on and as more people come out. One of the huge advantages of coming out so early, in my opinion at least, is avoiding the crowds, especially when climbing the mountain. At this moment, I really felt like I had the whole town to myself. As I approached the mountain, I could not help but think about how intense the climb will be, being that the mountain looked a lot steeper than I had imagined. But the cool thing is, in the interim, I enjoyed the walk to the foothills, checking out the many beautiful shops, as well as admiring the vivid tropical colors you see in the area. I even ran into a really cute coffee shop that happened to open up already, where I decided to stop and order a cold brew to help with the intense climb I was about to face. And shortly after, I come across one of the most beautiful restaurants I have ever been to in Mexico, which is something you will get to see towards the end of the episode, so stay tuned. As we get closer to the mountains, the businesses give way to stalls, some of which were starting to open. After walking many blocks from the center of the city, we finally reach the beginning of the mountain, and the flat street gives way to stairs. And the stalls on the sides slowly start to give way to nature itself. It isn't long before the stairs become even more steep, and at this point I have to make a very important disclaimer. Even though this experience was very interesting and nothing happened to me, I do have to warn you that it can be quite dangerous and even deadly. One reason that I say this is because there are many parts of this climb that are very steep and slippery, where you actually have to rely purely on the terrain without stairs. So if you choose to do this, you are doing it at your own risk, and please take extreme precaution. At this point, I wasn't even halfway yet, but I was already starting to feel tired. But we had to keep on going to make it up that mountain, so we had a long ways to go. As I mentioned before, the terrain can be quite challenging at times, so there were areas where I had to make the best use of boulders to continue the climb. Keep in mind that I started this journey with an empty stomach, which is something I would not suggest to anybody because I thought the climb would be a lot shorter than what it ended up being. But by this moment, I was too vested in the climb, so I decided to continue on with an empty stomach. Throughout the Tepozteco National Park, you come across many signs giving you information on the park, like this one that talks about how the park was founded in 1937. I used this brief pause to catch my breath, and then it was time to continue on. And after roughly 45 minutes of climbing, I finally reached the halfway point, after which I supposedly have another 550 meters left, which is roughly 1,800 feet. One interesting observation was that I noticed some very enterprising individuals that climbed up this high to sell snacks, but I did want to wait for more authentic food down below. At this point, we reach one of the last parts of the climb, where we find two cliffs, between which there is a set of stairs to help you with the climb to the top. Interestingly enough, the stairs to go up and down were separate, and I can only assume that this was for safety purposes. As I was going through this last intensive piece of the climb, I was really starting to lose my breath, but I have to say, the views compensated quite well. After roughly an hour and a half of making my way up the mountain, I finally get my first look at the pyramid. And as I go around to get to the pyramid, I am blessed with a breathtaking ambiance and stunning views in this very green and seismic land. And just like many of the other archaeological sites I have been to in this country, I had to purchase a ticket before entering. Built at an elevation of roughly 7,500 feet, which is also roughly 2,300 meters, this pyramid is supposedly dedicated to the Aztec God of Tepoztecatl, which is supposedly the god of fertility, drunkenness, and the ancient alcoholic beverage of Pulque. It is believed that pilgrims from as far out as Guatemala, which is over 500 miles away, would visit this place on foot. And as I got on top of the pyramid, I was able to have a better appreciation for the captivating landscape that was so beautiful and yet so seismically dangerous. I also enjoyed a great view of Tepoztlan down below, as well as of the main highway taking you to Mexico City, winding up the mountain. It was finally time to go down, especially since I hadn't eaten yet, and one of the first things that I see again is another alcohol-infused snake, and this time I had to ask why.
¿Por qué ponen víbora? ¿Qué hace
La
eso?
ayuda, no cura, pero le ayuda a las personas con cáncer, en bienestar de vida. Lo puede tomar cualquier persona, les va a beneficiar, les ayuda en lo que es una calidad de vida.
Now that it was daytime, I could really appreciate all the different art around town. And you could really feel the culture in their very colorful art. And not to mention, since time has passed because of the climb, we'll get to see how the city feels during the day. And boy, does the city come to life. You know, by now I was starving because of the climb, and lucky for me I ran into a street vendor selling very delicious tlacoyos, which are thicker than regular corn tortillas stuffed with ingredients.
This is the real stuff. This is blue corn. Eso es un quesadilla, ¿no? Ese.
Este es un tlacoyo.
Pero adentro tiene queso.
Este es de requesón.
Okay.
¿Crema y queso?
Sí, por favor. Gracias. Cecina con nopal. Queso con.
To say these freshly made tlacoyos were delicious was an understatement, and to enjoy them in such a lively ambiance was also a plus. Afterward, I had a chance to indulge in another local delicacy, and that is Pulque, which is an ancient alcoholic beverage created by the natives from the fermentation of the sap of the maguey plant. Known by many as agave wine, this drink is considered to be the ancestor of tequila and mezcal. But being that we still had so much more to discover, I decided to take the pulque with me, and one of the first things that we see is a group of dancing simis. And simi is a very famous character representing one of the biggest pharmacy chains in Mexico, which is Farmacias Similares. After this, I head over to the market area, which is something I usually do with every town that I visit, to see the soul of the city and also to see where the locals shop. So enjoy raw footage of the market area of Tepoztlan as I walk around with my pulque.
Gracias, nada más vamos a hacer un recorrido a Pulque. More Pulque.
Hola, bienvenida.
Being that many Pueblo Magicos in Mexico have beautiful bars and restaurants with a second story that offers stunning views, I wanted to find one to sit down and relax with a drink, and after walking around a while, I finally found one.
¿Puedo grabar mi experiencia aquí?
Sí, claro que sí.
Gracias. Muy bonita ciudad Tepoztlan.
Sí, gracias.
And of course, I got the views I was looking for, looking north towards the mountains and looking south towards the old market area. Lucky for me, there was even some live music to enjoy with my drink. After having this delicious drink with such a stunning view, it was now time to fast forward the clock and take you to one of the most beautiful restaurants I have ever been to in Mexico, and that is Axitla. One of the interesting things about this restaurant is that it does not look like much from the outside, but once you enter on the inside, it is like a whole different world. This property was massive, so before getting to the actual restaurant, I went through what seemed to be a natural preserve, which really took me by surprise. And believe it or not, this property has a stream going through it, which really added to the aesthetic beauty of this place, as you're about to see. Located near the beginning of the climb to the Tepozteco pyramid, this restaurant has been a very popular destination for visitors to this town, and I feel like it is a must-see if you ever make it out to Tepoztlan. After walking what seemed to be a few blocks within the property, we finally get to the actual restaurant portion. In addition to the stunning nature, this restaurant actually had some pretty cool and interesting local art inside. And of course, it seemed like from every table you had a beautiful view of the lush green forest outside. So I finally sat down and started with a delicious salad, as well as my favorite water in Mexico, which is Ipura, while enjoying these views, as well as the beautiful artwork around me. Being that I love the beef in Mexico, I ordered a beef dish along with a black bean dip, which tends to be quite common in this country. And just when you think you have seen the whole restaurant, guess again. There is even a bigger world behind the restaurant, filled with pathways connecting different sections with tables, allowing you to have your meal in nature if you choose to do so. To me, this place felt like a maze in paradise. It was slowly getting time to leave this beautiful town, so after spending some time discovering this massive and captivating restaurant, I decided to walk around to discover some of the other parts of town I had not seen yet. Doing this, I was able to see more views of the mountains from different angles, soak in more of the vivid tropical colors, and see some of the art I hadn't seen yet, as well as the many other businesses I had not discovered yet, such as this very beautiful and rustic coffee shop that I passed by. Being seduced by the beauty of this place, I decided to have one last matcha latte before leaving town. I even passed by a business that seemed to have teepees on the second floor. After this last walk, I developed an appetite again, so what better way to finish off my experience here in Tepoztlan than to visit another very beautiful restaurant like this one that served one of the best pizzas I've ever had. This pizza was made with cecina, which from what I understand is a type of marinated dried beef. Along with this pizza, I also indulged in a very delicious pastry made from guayaba and ricotta cheese. The amount of delicious food and tasty drinks that I had on this trip to Cuernavaca and Tepoztlan was quite overwhelming, to be honest with you. And this alone is a big reason to visit this wonderful country.